Hello there. My name is Jeremy Harmer, and I'm speaking to you for the Language and Language Teaching Conference, a conference that I signally failed to appear at due to a mix-up in time, and I would like to apologise profoundly for that. I'm sorry. We live in different time zones and I got mine mixed up, which is not a very good way to start this talk. So I'll go straight ahead. I want to talk to you about what it is that we as teachers choose to do and how we make those choices. And in case you think this is a strange subject, just think of all the choices we have to make on a daily basis in class. For example, imagine you're being observed and you have a lesson plan and you obviously want to complete the lesson plan, you want to get to the end point, you're nervous of being distracted in any way because you'll be judged on whether you achieve what you wanted to do. But what happens if in the middle of a lesson suddenly it goes wrong? What do you do? How much time do you spend repairing what went wrong if you suddenly discover the students didn't know something you thought they did know? Do you stop and correct it, or do you charge ahead to try and finish your plan? What if one of the students says something amazing, something that if you run with it, if you go with it, if you develop it, will absolutely make the class sing? But the problem is you're being observed and you've got to complete your plan. We have to make a choice each time. What do you do? Or what happens, for example, if a student makes a mistake? What choices do we have to make there? Well, one of the choices is to try and work out what the mistake is. And then we have to choose whether to correct it then, there, or maybe later. And then we have to choose how we want to correct it. Or what happens if a student starts to behave rather badly in some way or other and sort of gets, I don't know, out of control? What do you do? Do you slap that student down? I mean, metaphorically, of course. Do you try and work out why this problem is happening and try and resolve it through talk? We have to make a choice. Or what about, and this has been going on all my teaching life, which as you can see from looking at me is quite a long teaching life. What happens if the equipment starts to fail? These days, computers and I don't know, but it could be back in my day, things like the overhead projector or a tape recorder. What happens if equipment starts to fail? How long do you keep trying to make it work? It's a choice we make. It's a choice we make all the time. And teachers are called upon to make choices every second of the day in their classes. So there we are, choices. But what basis do we make the choices on? Well, I suppose we make them on a mixture of instinct and experience and belief, what we believe. But I think it's worth examining all of those sort of concepts, those three concepts. In other words, how good is teacher instinct really? I often act on instinct, and it doesn't always go well for me when I act on instinct instead of acting rationally and with thought. Instinct is a slightly dangerous animal. And it's my instincts, your instincts, our instincts are not always right. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. And what about experience? Well, it's true that as we become more experienced as teachers, we recognize situations we come across and we say, oh yes, excuse me, we've been there before. I've had this situation before. But what's the point of experience if we just have it? What's the point of experience if we don't learn from it? For example, I brush my teeth at least twice every single day. I've had that experience countless times in what is looking to be quite a long life, but I haven't learned anything from it. The point about experience is experience doesn't work unless you analyze it and learn from it. Just like all those choices we have to make in class, we need to always operate with if you like, two brains. I have this kind of rather strange idea in my head that we're sitting there, standing there, teaching in the class, do this, do that, and the other. We do that in the front of our brains with brain number one. But here, hovering around us, above us, is brain number two, watching what we're doing, evaluating, trying to assess whether it's working, whether things are going well. That's what I mean by two brain teaching. And in the case of experience, unless we use both brains, experience is just that, experience. So what? Doesn't do anything for us. And what about our beliefs? Where do they come from? Well, I think it's true to say that many of the beliefs that we hold come from way back. They come from when we were taught as kids at school. And try hard as we might, unless we really make an effort, we can't shake some of the habits that were drilled into us by our own teachers. Some of those habits were really good, but not all of them, because things move on, things change, things develop. So my worry about instinct and experience and belief is that it can become stuck, that we end up in a kind of stasis, a non-moving stasis. And we end up always doing what we've always done, because what we've always done is what we always do, and that's what we're comfortable with, and so there we are, and we're kind of stuck. But I don't think being stuck is a good thing. I think the opposite of being stuck is the quality that we need to demonstrate to the students in front of us. And what is that quality? Well, I think it's curiosity. I think all the best teachers I've ever had have been constantly curious about how teaching can be made better, curious about what to do next, curious about the world around them, curious about everything in our range, in our eyesight, everywhere. Curiosity is the one quality we want to provoke in our learners, to keep them as positive, active learners. But if we don't demonstrate it ourselves, well, then they're never going to get the idea. And more to the point, we're going to be stuck. Now, let's get this quite clear. I'm not saying that the habits, some of them that we've acquired, are all bad habits. Far from it. If we're any good as teachers, we've developed some good habits. But what I am saying is that unless we're curious, unless we try out new things, unless we sort of go the extra mile, go different places, see what happens if we do this and that, then I think we're just stuck. And I don't like the idea of teachers being stuck. I think it's put rather well in something I heard, strange enough, on the radio the other day, and it was nothing to do with teaching at all. But I've got a quote here, and I'm going to read it to you. It says, if you feel safe in the area you're working in, you're not working in the right area. Always go a little further out of your depth. And when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching the bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting. I think that says it better than I ever could. In other words, if you're in the comfortable place where you're usually there, you're in the wrong place. Go out into the water. Get farther out to the point where your feet aren't quite touching the bottom. That's when something exciting may happen. That's when you're in a place to open up and be curious and go forward and do things. And who said that? Well, he's a guy that I kind of like. He's this man. I don't know if you can see him, David Bowie, one of the greatest Western singers of the 20th century and early 21st century. So what I'm trying to say so far in this talk is, look, we make choices all the time in teaching. And if we use both brains, we'll make them wisely and sensibly. And if we make the absolute right choice, in my opinion, and I hope you agree with me, it's a choice to embrace curiosity and risk. It's a choice to sort of go out of your depth so that then something exciting can happen. It's a choice to be going, as a teacher, always going forward, because who knows what we could learn? Who knows how things could change for the better? Without, of course, throwing away some of the things and beliefs that have been good for us. And why is this important? Well, because about 2 years ago, our feet really weren't quite touching the bottom. About 2 years ago, around the world, teachers suddenly had to, even if they'd never done it before, they suddenly had to go online and teach there. And suddenly the things that we were comfortable with, being with a group of 20 students, 25 students, 12 students, 30 students, I don't know how big your classes are, suddenly that normality for us was taken from under our feet and we couldn't touch the bottom. And so what did we do? Well, the best teachers, what did the best teachers do in lockdown when they suddenly found themselves teaching online? The best teachers really tried to be adventurous and exciting. And my word, some of the creativity I've witnessed in teaching during the lockdown years has been, it just makes you want to cry with gratitude that you're part of this extraordinary profession. Unbelievable, the creativity that some teachers have shown. Not all, but some teachers have shown. And I love them and admire them for that. So there we were, suddenly, with our feet not touching the bottom, trying to swim in this, I was going to say, new world. Now, the abstract that I submitted for the talk for the Language and Language Teaching Conference said this: "It sometimes feels as if teachers have no choice, hemmed in as we are by organisations, syllabuses and exams. But if we've learned anything by being forced online, we've learned that we do have a choice. We always have a choice about how to respond to the situation we're in, the way we teach, the topics we introduce, what we ask students to do and how we make them feel." And those choices were made absolutely full front focus for us during the lockdown period. So let's just discuss them all a bit and see how we feel. Let's discuss, to start with, how we make students feel. Well, now, I think there's always been a slight mismatch between different education cultures here. Over in my side of the world, I'm speaking to you from the city of Cambridge, small city, but it's a city with a beautiful university in the United Kingdom. But we also have a science park. Microsoft is here and various biotech firms and things like that. It's a lovely place. And we got some fantastic, the universities, the buildings are just amazing. We've always had an idea this side of the pond that how we make students feel is to do with rapport. And rapport for us is that relationship that teachers and students have with each other that it's almost impossible to quantify. And on teacher training courses here, we talk about things like treating students with respect, looking at them and paying attention to them when they speak, and never criticizing the student. You could criticize some of the things they do, but not the student. Respecting their opinions, listening to what they have to say. That's what we mean as by respect. Looking them in the eye when they speak, that kind of thing. Is that what rapport would mean for you? I think it's a really interesting thing sometimes cross-culturally to discuss what it is teachers feel about how, I'll start again, what opinions teachers have about how they should make their students feel. But now listen, all that I'm going to say from now on for the rest of this talk is to do with what I think has happened in lockdown when we've gone online. I've ended up adjusting my mind. That's too strong. Having slightly different, if you like, feelings about this as a result of lockdown. So I've ended up being slightly more abstract, wishy-washy, we'll see, about what I think about this. For example, what I've listed down here for me is, how we make them feel, how we should make students feel. Well, in the first place, I think, and I don't think this is culturally terribly unique, I think we need to make students feel that they are listened to and valued. I don't know how we do that. Well, I've got my ideas. After all, I write about methodology and I run teacher training courses. But in a kind of abstract sense, what I'm saying is we need them to feel as if we're listening to them and we value them. I can't think of anything more important a teacher ever does. I think we need to make students feel supported, to feel part of a community. This community in this classroom with me. But when we were locked down and we were online, they weren't in a classroom with us, and it was much more difficult. But we were able to make them feel supported, almost better sometimes, because if you're on Zoom or you're using Teams or one of the other programs around, you can reach out to students, direct messaging, text messaging, all that kind of thing, rather more easily than you can in a face-to-face classroom. You can ask students to support each other, to explain things to each other, how they work, and they can do that quietly through messaging, direct messaging, rather than trying to get it done, in the classroom right here. I think, and this was a big issue when we went online, I think students need to feel absolutely safe. Whatever we do, they need to feel safe with what's going on. I think, and this was really difficult online, is really difficult online. I think we need to make them feel alive, just buzzing. Somehow, how do you do that with students who don't want to turn their cameras on, who are reluctant to be there? How do you do that? Well, we'll come on to the kind of tasks we give them that hopefully will provoke them to feel alive like that. I think we want students to feel, here comes the word again, I think we want students to feel curious, absolutely curious about what we're offering them. What does this mean? Oh, what can I get out of this? Oh my word, I want to find out more about that. And we want to make them feel challenged. Challenged. I challenge you. We say that in English. We say, I challenge you to do something. I challenge you to do this. Children play games of dare. I dare you to walk there. I dare you to say this. I dare you to do that. And in a sense, online, it's been more important than ever to dare students, to challenge them, to make them curious, to make them feel alive and supported. And more than anything else, that we, the teacher, value them and we will listen to them. And in some ways, doing that online was easier, can be easier than doing it face to face. because you're away from the sort of noise and ruction and all the other people in the room around you. I don't know, do you agree with me? I wish we could have a discussion about this, you and I. But I'm currently just talking to my camera, so I'll just have to imagine that you're reacting and responding to what I say. Well, one of the things that, some of the things I just said is about challenging students, making them curious, making them feel alive. And a lot of that has to do with what we ask the students to do. What tasks do we give students? And how do we do it? Well, again, I've got some abstract terms with me here. I've talked about deep processing and thinking and listening and choosing. Let me explain very briefly what I'm talking about. Deep processing is that kind of mixture of cognitive and emotional response and action. I was very impressed by articles I've read about this, and my brain's gone blank, but there was a very famous 1969 article. There's a man called Stephen Chu at the University of Sanford in the United States who does lectures about this, and a very good book published in 2021 by an emeritus professor of cognitive psychology, whose name I can supply later on. And they basically talk about this little thought experiment. The 2021 book describes how undergraduates that arrive at a university to study psychology, and the psychology of learning in particular. And so the professor, they're all in the lecture theatre, there they are, and he gives them all a piece of paper, and it's got some words written on it. And he divides the whole room into A students and B students, pairs of A and B students. And he says, right, have a look at these words. And about 20, 25 seconds later, with no warning, he says, right, turn your pieces of paper over, see how many you can remember. I need to start some of that again because I've missed out a key detail and you won't understand what this story is all about. He gives them a list of words. And to the A, remember he's put them in A and B students. And to the A students, he says, look at this list of words and decides which words are taller at the beginning than at the end. So, for example, if you have a word like face, for example, well, it's taller at the beginning because the F is taller than the E at the end, face. But if you have a word like run, it's not taller at the beginning, at the end. So the A students had to decide which of the words in the list were taller at the beginning than at the end. The B students had to decide which of the words described something that was alive. And 25 seconds later, or maybe a minute later, he said, turn over your pieces of paper, don't look at them, now see how many words you can remember. And it turned out that the B students could all remember many more words than the A students. Or there was another experiment done way back in 1969, way back, where they asked different people to remember a list of words, to look at them, and one group of subjects was told nothing, another group of students was told, look at this list of words, we'll test you in a bit to see how many you can remember, and another was given the same list of words and they were told to find out how many words had the letter I in them. And the fourth group was told to look at the list of words and decide which of those words they liked. And in both cases, the task that asked students for some kind of emotional response. In other words, which words describe something alive, or which words do you like? Because that demands an emotional response. They remembered more of those words than anybody else remembered those words. Why? Because they were involved in deep processing. If you deep and shallow, you know those terms, deep water, and shallow water. And the idea is that if I ask you which words are taller at the beginning than at the end, that's shallow. But if I ask you which words describe something that's alive, or which words do you like, that's much deeper. It involves you in not just cognitive reasoning or processing, but emotional processing as well. Deep processing. Whatever tasks I do, I'm going to provoke students into deep processing, and that will make them more curious than just giving them a rather shallow task. I want to make sure that I give students tasks which do make them think as well as the emotional stuff. That's why we talk about deep processing being a combination of the two things. I want to make sure that my students learn how to listen. How they learn how to listen to other students and give them that respect and that value that we're going to give them as teachers. But I want to get them to listen to each other too, to listen to their inner voices, to listen to their own thoughts, to listen. And it's the same when they read something. I want to get them to process what they read deeply and to listen, if you like, metaphorically, to listen to the voice inside the writing, however simple it is. And ideally, this is an ideal which seems to me to work very well in the online context, is if we can give students more than one or two possibilities and allow them to choose what they want to do. Because the moment a student chooses what they want to do, would you like to do this or that? The moment they choose, they're more invested in what's going on. But the important thing is to provoke students with the tasks we give them to want to do that task and to process deeply what they're doing. Tasks that allow them to have not just a whole thinking procedure going on, but an emotional interaction with it as well. Of course, this is deeply tied up with the topics we give our students. What are the best topics? How long is a piece of string? What's the most beautiful mountain in the world? I mean, all of these questions are a bit silly. But what I know, no, I'm not going to say that. What I think, and I'm trying to use my experience, but my experience modified by my second brain trying to evaluate what that experience has taught me, if anything. What I know is that students, we all like a good laugh, we all like some fun, something light-hearted and maybe not terribly serious. But on the whole, students are much more likely to be engaged and to allow themselves deep processing if the topic is authentic, it's for real, they get it. I'm not saying it has to be serious and terribly profound, that's not what I'm saying. But if it's authentic and real and about real things that they can relate to, serious, funny, sad, exciting, well, I don't know, whatever, they're much more likely to be engaged with the topic. It's really good, and it has been really good online, and some teachers have really learned how to do this, if the topics can be student initiated. In other words, if the students can suggest, bring, choose, do all this kind of things with topics. And then I would like to say that the topics we choose for students should be unrestricted. Look, every classrooms exist not in the world of linguistics, but in the world of sociolinguistics, seems to me. We live classrooms exist in the communities they exist in. So I'm not suggesting for 1 second that we should rush in and offend every cultural sensibility that our students have by bringing in something that is inappropriate. But I'm saying, do you remember David Bowie talking about when your feet can't quite touch the ground, then something exciting happens. I think what we learnt online is that we could go outside some of the normal things, some of the normal topics, go deeper, more interesting, more kind of, not weird exactly, but different. I don't think we need to we don't need to restrict the topics as much as we have done. There's a whole world out there of interesting, emotional, wonderful things to learn about and do. And the other thing I would say about topics is we want them to be as varied as possible. We want to vary what we do with students. I'll start that again. We want to vary the topics we ask them to talk about and discuss. Unless, of course, with a particular group, we find a topic or a range of topics that keeps them going for a long time. And that is possible. I mean, I remember one teacher in Colombia, in South America, and he got his students working for, these were secondary students, not university students, secondary students. But he got them working for quite more than a month on writing a film script and making a film and stuff like that. And when he talked about it, his eyes lit up with joy and happiness about what his students had achieved. Always a mark of a good teacher, by the way. But anyway, I think the topics want to be, I'm going to use some of the same words again, authentic as far as possible, challenging, involving, varied, slightly risky sometimes. I repeat, I am not trying to suggest something which is culturally inappropriate for the society that the students live and work in. But a bit of challenge doesn't hurt anyone, it seems to me. And what about the way we teach? Well, I've written books about the roles of a teacher and the different ways we teach and the things we do. I'm perfectly proud of them. No, that's the wrong word. I will stand by what I've written in that kind of situation. But when I was thinking about this, about the choices we make about how to be in classroom, in the light of the 2 or 3 years we've spent teaching online, I suddenly found out that I was writing down different words, or maybe the words were sort of in a different context. I wrote down words like motivator, but that's not very new. We've always said that motivation is a key element of language learning success, or any other learning if it comes to that. But I think online we've had to work out ways of motivating students more than we ever did before, or in a different way. So it's in our DNA, the motivation thing. We know about it. We know how important it is. I think our job is to be an incentive provider. Give them incentives. I have music teachers, for example. And what does a music teacher do? Individual music teachers, I play the viola, or I do that kind of thing. And what do? They say, come along next week and I'd like you to learn this piece or learn this bit or do this before next week. And I know I'm going to meet her next week, my teacher. And I don't want to arrive, we say, empty-handed. I don't want to arrive saying, oh, I couldn't do it. She's given me an incentive to practice. I need that incentive. Or, for example, in an orchestra I play in, we've got a concert coming up. And if you're in a concert and you're one of an orchestra, you don't want to be the one who screws it up for everybody else. So the incentive is there to practice and make sure you don't. In the same way, teachers of groups and teachers of students give incentives. I don't mean you're going to be tested. That's the wrong kind of incentive. But I mean kind of incentives. Well, let's try and do this. And if you do this, we can do that. And here's an incentive, because if you manage to do that, this will happen. Those are really good incentives, positive incentives. Things where you can say, hand on heart, well, my heart's not here, but that's what we say. You can say, hand on heart, if you do this, your life will be better in some way. I mean, only in a little way, that kind of thing. I think more than ever online, we became problem solvers. At first, it was just things like, you're muted. No, unmute yourself. I can't hear you. Unmute yourself. Turn your camera on. Turn your camera off. All this kind of stuff. We enable, online we've had to enable to help students understand how to do things. Yes, some of our students are younger than us and they're technologically more astute than us. But I'm not sure I even believe that. I'm not sure technological ability is to do with the age of the people who use it. Although it's true that kids who are born today grow up surrounded by technology in a way certainly that someone of my age never did. Well, except, let's be quite clear, in the world, the number of people who have access to technology is a minority. We are a minority. But that's a talk for another day. Of course, I think we should be a knowledge resource. We should be able, as far as possible, to answer students' questions about things. However, we don't know everything, and language is a tricky customer. And finally, we should be, along with students, we should be a searcher, a curious searcher. Okay, so that's all been very general. Let's look at, in the last 5 or 8 minutes of this talk, let's look at what this means. Let's move from the abstract to the concrete. Now, a few days ago, I was talking to a very good friend of mine, a cellist. He plays the cello, you know, you sit down and play it like this, stringed instrument. He plays the cello, and he's a cello teacher. And I'm a folk singer as well, and he plays with me sometimes, and we do gigs, we do performances, the two of us. And his cello just sounds like heaven. It's just amazing. Anyway, and I was talking to him about his teaching and how lockdown, teaching an instrument online, had affected him, and what changes he'd noticed when he went back to teaching live, teaching face-to-face. And he's quite a young man, and he's learning, he's gaining that experience, he's developing his instinct. But what happened to him, and I was so impressed by this, he said that various things had happened to him. He said, one of the things he's learned is to remove himself from the equation, to make the teacher less not important, but less of a focal point, less of a focus. For example, he would, before lockdown, when he taught one of his students, he would take his own cello to the lesson. And when the student had a problem, he'd say, well, look, it's done like this. And he would play them the piece and how it should sound. And he realized that the students would then just listen to him and go, ah. So now he doesn't take his own instrument to a lesson anymore. He says, what do you think's going wrong? How could you solve this? In other words, he makes it all part, or he makes the students the absolute central focal point of the whole exchange. But and he says to the student, you tell me what's wrong. He gets them to teach him. But the thing that he's discovered, and this is what he discovered in lockdown, and I think this is just the message for me. He says, when I teach one of my students to play their instrument, I've realized that I need to listen to the person, not the music. Listen to the person, not the music. And in that little discovery by young Josh, is the kind of a basic secret about the whole of education. Because what he said is really profound, and you've probably said it before, but everyone has to come to their own discoveries and insights in their own time. What he's saying is, it's about the person in the room, not the teacher. I mean, we're important to ourselves, but it's about the student in the room. Listen to the student, not the English. Listen to the person, not the grammar. What's happening with that person? And that's the basis on which we should act. What does this mean? Well, let's come up with some concrete examples. I've got here, let's talk about the person and the music, because it's not one thing or another. I've got here, you can't see it. Well, I'll show you the sort of thing I'm talking about. I've got here a typical text, you see? And no, of course you can't read it. But it's I mean, yes, of course, you could read it, but you can't because we're just on camera and you can't. But it's just a text, a sort of social studies text about the famous marshmallow experiment. You remember that was the experiment where they said to 4-year-old kids, here's a marshmallow, but if you're prepared to wait for 2 minutes, I'll bring you another one, then you can have 2 marshmallows. And they learned lots of things about, and the kids who were able to wait seem to have done better in the intervening, in the years after, than the kids who just gobbled the first marshmallow. Anyway, that's not the point of the story. It's just a social sciences text. It's quite interesting and stuff like that. So what can you do with a text like that? Indeed, what can you do with any text? Well, listen to the person, not the music. First thing, the most important thing you will ever do in reading, and we learned this online because you could really go for it, both in the chat and on camera and stuff like that, is what's more interesting than any comprehension question, any vocabulary, any test, is to find out how the students feel about it. Did you enjoy the text? Did it interest you? Why? Why not? What's the most interesting part of the text for you? Tell me the bit that convinced you. Tell me the bit where you started to get bored. The moment you say to the students which bit interests you, guess what we're involving them in? Answer: deep processing. Do you remember? Which words do you like? Those were the words they remembered. So it's about personal response always. For example, here's a way of making sure that for students, the reading text is more than just a reading text. So for example, you say to students, look at the text. I'd like you to choose 3 words or phrases that you would like to put in your suitcase and take home. I don't mean your colleagues, I don't mean the other students in the class, just you. Choose 3 words or phrases that you personally like the look of and you would like to put them in your learning suitcase and take them home with you. And now they're your words. They're not the teacher's words, they're not the text words, they're yours because you've taken them and you've made them your own. Isn't that amazing as a concept? It's not original, by the way. What we're saying is, it's all about you, the person. It's about you, the learner, not me. And then we can do lots of other things. The marshmallow experiment, you've read about it here. Okay, go find out some more about it. Has anyone done the experiment again? Has anyone tried to do a different experiment? Do you believe it? How do you feel? Go and find out about how are kids capable of putting off gratification or not, and so on. And then, of course, we can do all sorts of things like asking students to present their own little talk about this. Speak to camera like I'm doing now. Little 2-minute talk explaining what went on. That's really good for them, but it's about them. Can they get it right in front of the camera, etc., etc. And I could go on and on, but my time is pretty much up. So let me try and summarize everything I've been saying. We make choices all the time in class. It's just part of being a teacher. We make choices in our personal lives, but that's not my area for this talk. Our choices are sometimes the result of learned belief and experience, which just sends us down the same path day after day after day after day, so that our choices are no longer real choices at all. They're just kind of what we do. But as David Bowie said, the singer, or is it David Bowie? I've never really known. Alas, he's not around for me to be able to ask him. As he said, it's when your feet can't quite touch the bottom that life gets interesting. Well, he didn't say that, but I'm saying that life gets interesting, and some things can be achieved and some things can really work for you. And that's what happened to us online. It's all about being curious and trying out innovation and going the extra mile and being there. But in the end, and this really is the end of my talk, in the end, it's about listening to the person, not the music. So there we are. Thank you very much for watching and listening. Once again, I apologize for the time mix-up that meant that I couldn't speak to you live and in person, but I hope this has been some recompense for that. And I look forward to meeting you all sometime in person now that the world has come back. Has it? All we have to worry about now is, well, everything else. Climate. Oh God, I'm going to get depressed. Thank you very much for watching and listening. See you all later. Bye-bye. Goodbye.